Top 3 Scariest Mall Horror Stories You'll Wish You Never Knew. Warning, this story is not for the faint of heart. Proceed at your own risk. You should have never clicked on this video. You shouldn't be here hearing these stories because once you do, there's no turning back. The nightmares will follow you and it will never stop. It knows you're listening. If you're still here, then let me tell you about the horrors of the mall, places that should be bustling with life, yet lurking behind the flashing lights and polished floors, there are things you could never imagine. And once you hear them, you'll wish you hadn't. Story number 1, The Forever Store. It started as a typical evening for Jenna. She had decided to spend her Friday evening at the local mall, a routine that was supposed to be relaxing. As she walked through the halls, something caught her eye, a store that wasn't there before. It was small, tucked away in a dimly lit corner of the mall. Its windows were fogged up, and the sign above the door simply read, "The Forever Store." Curious Jenna walked in. The scent of dust and something metallic hit her immediately. The store was dark, filled with strange, antiquated items. Old toys, moth-eaten clothes, and brittle photographs. There was a display case in the middle with a mannequin standing perfectly still, staring straight at her. Something about its eyes felt wrong. As Jenna moved closer to inspect it, the mannequin's hand twitched. She froze, heart hammering. The mannequin's eyes blinked, slowly, and then it smiled. It was a smile that seemed to stretch far too wide, unnatural, grotesque. Terrified, Jenna backed away, but the mannequin stepped forward, its legs jerking like they were made of metal, unnatural movements like a puppet on a string. The door slammed shut behind her with a deafening crash. "Stay with us," a voice whispered in the shadows. She ran for the door, but the walls seemed to stretch, elongating the hallway, the door becoming further out of reach. Each step felt heavier, as if the air itself was pushing against her, as if the mall itself didn't want her to leave. By the time she reached the door, it was locked. When she turned back, the mannequin was right behind her, now holding a silver key. It was too late. The Forever Store wasn't just a shop, it was a prison. Jenna never made it out. And the mannequin? It's still there, waiting for the next curious soul to wander in. Story number 2, The Shattered Glass. Tom was finishing up some shopping at the mall, running a few errands before meeting his friends for dinner. He decided to walk past the grand fountain in the center of the atrium, where the sound of cascading water always brought a sense of peace. But today something was different. As he walked by, his foot struck something on the floor. Looking down, he saw shards of glass, scattered across the marble tiles, gleaming in the low light. Strange, he hadn't seen anyone around. He bent down to pick it up, but as his hand hovered over the pieces, a cold gust of wind blew from nowhere, sending the shards scattering again. Tom's heart raced. He looked around, but there was no one in sight. Then the glass began to move. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the shards began to shift, assembling into something, forming a shape that wasn't human but something else. Tom's eyes widened as the glass began to rise, creating a jagged figure made entirely of sharp, fragmented shards. It towered over him, the reflection of his horrified face mirrored in its surface. Suddenly, the glass shifted again, sharpening, slicing through the air, and before Tom could react, the figure lunged forward. The last thing he saw before the darkness overtook him was the twisted smile in the glass, a grin made of shards, shattering him into pieces. Story number 3, The Silent Floor. Mia had always loved the mall. She'd been coming here since childhood, feeling comforted by the noise, the chatter, the busy life around her. But on this night, the mall was eerily quiet. The lights flickered, casting strange shadows that twisted unnaturally. She brushed it off as a faulty bulb. But then she stepped into the elevator. The door closed behind her, and the elevator began its slow ascent. When it reached the top floor, the doors opened, but no one was there. Just an empty, dusty hallway, flickering lights, and the unmistakable scent of mildew. Mia felt the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. Something was wrong. She stepped out, her footsteps echoing down the hallway as she moved deeper into the forgotten part of the mall. The further she went, the more oppressive the silence became, like a weight pressing against her chest. And then, she heard it. A voice. Soft at first, almost imperceptible, as if it was coming from the walls themselves. "Mia?" She stopped dead in her tracks, her heart thumping violently in her chest. The voice came again, this time louder, more insistent. "Mia, come closer." Unable to control her body, she stepped forward. The lights began to flicker faster now, the air colder with every step. At the end of the hallway, she saw a figure. A woman dressed in old, tattered clothes, her back turned to Mia. "Who are you?" Mia called out, her voice trembling. The woman turned. Her face was pale, unnaturally so, and her eyes were hollow. Empty sockets stared back at Mia, black as the void. Before Mia could react, the woman's hand shot out, grabbing her arm with an unnatural strength. Her skin was cold, and it felt as if something was feeding on her energy. And then, as Mia screamed, the hallway behind her began to collapse, the walls closing in, trapping her in an endless, suffocating void. The woman's laugh echoed through the darkness, the last sound she would ever hear. The mall was never the same after that night. The cursed truth. Now that you've heard these stories, do you feel it? The weight on your chest, the tightening of your throat? You thought these were just stories, didn't you? But here's the truth. The mall is never empty. And neither are you. The stories you just heard? They don't end with the video. They never do. Because as soon as you heard them, you became part of them. The next time you walk past a mall at night, when you hear the rustle of something in the shadows, the cold air that suddenly surrounds you, the flicker of a light too dim to be ordinary, know that you're not alone. The mall will be waiting for you, and it will call you back. Subscribe now before it calls you again. Warning, if you're still listening, it's not over. The stories, they know you now.